Have you ever played Follow the Leader, but no one wanted to be the leader? Well, that's a bit like how the world is at the moment. It's a bit leaderless. You know, English novelist Rudyard Kipling once talked about the law of the jungle, where the leader or alpha rules. But in today's world, things are a bit different. We're living in a time with different rules and no clear leader. Hi, I'm Mike Bain from Christian Voice New Zealand. Thanks for joining me as we explore the question of who is putting their hand up as we look at today's culture through the lens of the Bible. The law of the jungle is a phrase that originated as a metaphor to describe survival and self-interest in nature, emphasising that the strongest, most cunning or most adaptable tend to succeed. It's often associated with a world where rules are determined by strength, not mutual agreements or fairness. In literature, the phrase is famously used in The Jungle Book, which is by Rudyard Kipling. Now, interestingly, Kipling's interpretation of the law of the jungle is not about chaos or ruthless survival, but rather about structured rules and order within a community. In the book itself, the wolves have their own code of conduct for living harmoniously in the wild. So here are some of the rules that were described in Kipling's book. Beyond its literary context, the phrase has also come to symbolise situations where the strongest dominate or where there are no formal rules or regulations. It can carry both a positive and a negative connotation, depending on how it's used. In the real world, the concept of the law of the jungle is often used to describe situations where there are few or no formal rules and individuals or entities rely on strength, cunning, or adaptability to succeed. This phrase frequently applies in contexts like business, politics, or even societal dynamics. Let me just give you a few examples. In the corporate world, the law of the jungle can be observed in highly competitive industries where companies fight to dominate market share. In international relationships, the phrase is used to describe power dynamics where stronger nations wield influence over weaker ones. And in societies with minimal social safety nets, individuals may experience a law of the jungle environment where survival hinges on resourcefulness or endurance. And of course you've got the natural ecosystems beyond human interactions. The phrase remains literal in wildlife, predator-prey relationships and competition for resources, and ecosystems exemplify the survival of the fittest. While the phrase can carry negative connotations, it's not always about ruthlessness. It can also celebrate resilience and adaptability and innovation. And that leads us to today's world where we have, well, this big war going on between Russia and Ukraine that's dominated conversations for 3 years. There's a pretty good chance we might have a ceasefire over the course of this year. But last year we had exploding wars across the Middle East, focused on Gaza, but also Lebanon. And we've just recently seen the end of the ceasefire. Late last year, there was an enormous concern that the election, for example, in the US was going to be seen as illegitimate by half the population. Well, that didn't happen. Trump still won. He won the popular vote and also in addition to the electoral vote. And there's still a lot of people who really just don't like him, but everyone agrees that the election was free and fair, not rigged. And so he comes into office with more legitimacy. Now, in that regard, 2025 should feel pretty good, and yet it doesn't. So why is that? The reason for it is because we really have a breakdown of the global order. We have a reversion to what we call a G0 in the world. The world cannot follow the leader because we have a noticeable absence of global leadership. But we're seeing confusion from the world leaders at the moment. They're unsure what their boundaries are. Look, even here in New Zealand, we're hearing news reports about Chinese warships exercising in the Tasman Sea. And they're targeting the Philippines, and they're still manoeuvring around Taiwan. And just last night I read that Russian warships have been spotted in the English Channel. But here in New Zealand, we're equally confused as a nation in regards to our government's boundaries, where we've given up personal responsibility and we expect the state to care for us. You know, it really is the law of the jungle. And when you have a world where the law of the jungle exists, the apex predator does very, very well. Right now, by default, the apex is clearly the United States. But it's a very dangerous place in time for pretty much everyone else. And that's what we're looking at. Back in January, in an interview with the US-based Forbes magazine, a political scientist, Ian Bremner, compared this time that we're in right now to the 1930s. And anyone who has any knowledge about history, you'll know that the 1930s was not a great time. Why? Because it was a precursor to World War II.
It was a time when the institutions were inadequate. The rules were inadequate to determine how countries should engage with each other. It was a time of when countries didn't know if their territorial integrity was going to be intact, that they didn't feel like their alliances were certain and sure. It's exactly the kind of conversations that we're having right now. I mean, whether it's coming from Russia or coming from China or coming from the United States, the old rule book is being ripped up. And the people that need that rule book are playing defense. They're saying, look, we just hope that we're not going to be in the headlines, because it's not like they're powerful enough to actually, combat anyone that's trying to undermine them. It's more like give enough to make it go away, try to appease them, try to, get that. You talk about the 30s. Appeasement was a big conversation in the 30s. Appeasement's becoming a big conversation in 2025.
And we all know where appeasement took the world by the end of the 30s, eh? But it's an interesting word, appeasement, but let's just ask, have we not been in this position many times before, where we've been devoid of leadership? The alpha, if you like. Biblically, if you were to compare today with many biblical times when nations faced uncertainty and danger, there are many. And should we not learn from them? But you may recall, though, that the nation of Israel wanted someone to lead it. And Saul was anointed. And it's fair to say it just didn't work out for them. But in considering an alpha in today's world, I can't help but refer back to a former secretary to the United Nations, European diplomat and a former secretary of NATO, Paul Henry Spack, where he said, and I quote, the nations are ready to give the kingdoms of the world to any one man who will offer us a solution to the world's problems. And it's interesting, that quote was made in the 1960s, early 1960s. And there's another quote from British historian Paul Johnson, who said that there's one lesson to be learned above all others. There's no substitute for prudent, strong, and courageous leadership. Well, this world is at the crossroads where it wants leadership. The geopolitical landscape looks prime, just as it was in the 1930s, for a leader who can sway the masses. And as Hitler is long gone with Stalin, Mao Zedong and Idi Amin, there is no real contender to take on that role of the leader of the world. We're at the stage where, right now, Paul Henry Spack is correct. We will willingly, yes we will willingly give all the nations, all the kingdoms to one man. Now this is where we pick up the world situation and look at it through the lens of the Bible. The Bible identifies such a person. The foundations are in place thanks to actions and policies of world organisations led by the United Nations, the World Health Organization, World Economic Forum, the World Bank and other collective global organisations. A leader in the Bible refers to in Thessalonians as the man of perdition. It's also known as the Antichrist, and just watch the world fall at his feet and cede power to this person. And there will be no word such as appeasement in those world. Under the rulership of the Antichrist, it will be a far cry from Kipling's Rule of the Jungle, where there was protection, resources, responsibility, respect, and boundaries. There will be none of this. As a citizen of this world, we must ensure that at least Kipling's version of the rules of the jungle are the minimum we adhere to today, while peace and prosperity is available. Hey, but if you want to have proper guidance on life, family, nationhood, and a taste of what real loving and lasting leadership looks like, I suggest you grab a copy of the Bible and have a read. Discuss what you don't understand or comprehend with that God-bothering friend of yours. Hey, thanks for watching. As always, we ask you to leave your comments, share this message with someone else, subscribe, or if you want to find out how you can support us, the details are on our website, christianvoicenewzealand.com. Let me just leave you with this thought from the book of Numbers 6:24. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Until next time.